Thank you very much. Good to be back with you tonight. You know, there's nothing so unpleasant as a greedy, grumbly old person. There was a couple, they were in their 90s. They were going around and the husband was kind of affable, but the wife, oh, she was so greedy, she'd make a penny squeal. And they were out just walking around, went to the carnival that night, and they were looking around at what was going on, and of course she didn't want to spend any money. So they came up to this place that had helicopter rides, $50. Well, Ethel and we'll call him Don. Don and Ethel went there and looked at it, and Don said, "Come on, Ethel, we've never ridden in a helicopter." Says, "I've always wanted to, and we got plenty of money, so let's go on up." "No, we're not going to go up there." "Ethel, I'm over $1 million in the bank. We can afford it." She says, "It's not that. It's the principle of the thing. $50 is $50. "But Ethel, no, $50 is $50. Well, the helicopter man had been overhearing them, and he went up to them and he said, "Folks," he said, "I'll tell you what. I'll take you up on this helicopter for free, but if you make a sound, you have to pay the money." So Don looked at Ethel and she said, "Okay." So anyway, they got on there and got on that helicopter, went up there. Man, he shot up there and went around and turned here and turned there and turned everywhere. And man, I'll tell you what, he really put on a show and scared everybody to death. And so he got back to the ground, and Don got out first, and he said, "Well, folks, I got to tell you," it says, "you're the first ones that's gone up there and hadn't made a peep." He said, "Well, I almost said something when Ethel fell out, but $50 is $50. You know, Ethel, she wasn't liked very much, was she? Well, there was once a man named Nicholas who was an elder of the church. He lived in the 4th century in a place called Myra in Asia Minor, now called Turkey. He was a very rich man because his parents died when he was young and left him a lot of money. He was also a very kind man and had a reputation for helping the poor and giving secret gifts to people who needed it. In the town, there was a poor man who had 3 daughters. He was so poor he didn't have enough money for a dowry, so his daughters couldn't get married. A dowry is a sum of money paid to the bridegroom by the bride's parents on their wedding day. This still happens in some countries even today. One night, Nicholas secretly dropped a bag of gold down the chimney into the house. This meant that the oldest daughter was then able to be married. The bag fell into a stocking that had been hung by the fire to dry. And this was repeated later with the second daughter. Finally, determined to discover the person who had given them the money, the father secretly hid behind the fire every evening until finally he caught Nicholas dropping in a bag of gold. Nicholas begged the man not to tell anyone what had been done because he did not want to bring attention to himself. But soon the news got out, and when anyone received a secret gift, it was thought that maybe it was from Nicholas. Thus began the legend of Santa Claus. Does it feel good to give? Paul said, though we don't have it in the Gospels, Paul said that Jesus said it is more blessed to give than to receive. I love, at Christmas time, I love giving things away to people. And my family have a tradition. We've got so many now in the family that we have kind of white elephant with good gifts. And then the next day we have what we call Santa beeps. And that takes about all day to do because everybody gets one. And it's a whole bunch of things wrapped up. You might go to Goodwill and buy it, or something you were going to throw away, or a re-gift from last year. It might be something horrible, it might be something okay. And they'll write something and they'll wrap everything in newspaper or toilet paper or something like that. So we have a good time with it, and our family gets together, and then after that we all sing. Our family loves to sing. In Luke 6:38, Jesus says, "Give, and it shall be given to you. Good" what? Measure. Pressed down, shaken together, and running over will be put into your bosom. For with the same measure that you use, it will be measured back to you again." Now, we've been looking at the circle of influence, haven't we? And what's in the outside of our circle, our outer circle?
Non-Christians.
Non-Christians. People that were trying to get into the church, or people that have fallen away. And the next circle? The church family. And what's on the inner circle, on the inner core? What's in your heart and what's in your hand. That's very important to remember. Because we have a lot of things that we can do to help people. We really do. We have a lot that's in our heart and a lot that's in our hand. And so we need to, but what's in our hand is going to be dictated by what's in our heart. Susie bought a couple of bags of groceries today because I talked about it again, so we're wanting to get back into that habit. If they're on the side of the road and they ask for food, we'll give them food. That's probably not what they want, but give them food anyway. And so they'll sell it. But anyway, and they might really need it. You never know. The word give is not a single act of kindness. It is really a lifestyle. Proverbs 19:6, now notice this, says, "Many curry favor with the ruler, and everyone is the friend of one who gives gifts." Now think about that. Everyone is a friend of those who give gifts. You have in your hand to give gifts all day long to a lot of people. It may be encouragement, it may be a smile, it may be, "May Jesus go with you today." It may be a tip to a waitress or a waiter. It may be, you might want to buy somebody's dinner. It may be a piece of candy. It may be, who knows what it could be. It may be somebody tells you that they collect giraffes. Well, you might have an old giraffe laying around your house, that you stuffed after you shot it. I bet they'd love to have that giraffe, didn't you? We stayed in a home where he was a big hunter, big game hunter, and I tell you what, he had mounts all over the place. Bears, including a grizzly, and one of those buffalo type things with the bone across, the horn across the face and everything. It's the most deadly one of all. It's more deadly than a rhino. It kills more people than a rhino. But, that was amazing to see all those things. But he wasn't going to give them away. But, there are very generous people. Very generous people. I look at the next one, Proverbs 18:16. Giving a gift can open doors. It gives access to important people. And don't ask me what that word is beside it, but something in Russian, I think. Anyway, giving a gift gives access to important people. We're too busy out. When we look at people, we judge them by what we're trying to get from them. And that's not the way we should look at them. When a politician looks at a crowd, what does he see? Voters. When a salesman looks at a crowd, what does he see? Suckers, that's right. Sales. And when a Christian, when a disciple looks at a crowd, what should we see?
Opportunity.
What's that?
Opportunity.
Opportunity. Souls. Souls to bring to Christ, right? Well, this phrase that he, one time before I went to preaching school, I managed a Kentucky Fried Chicken. And that wasn't one of the greatest experiences I had in my life. But they had a conference with all the stores that were owned by this particular group. And so we had a conference and we went to that. All the managers were invited to come. And so I was impressed with Colonel Sanders' life. And so I wrote him a song. I mean, the guy was bankrupt when he was 65. He went around to little hamburger places and sold his recipe to them. Finally, someone bought him out, his recipe out for $2 million. But that's not where he made his money. He had a contract with this guy that bought him out. He says, I want to be the supplier of all your equipment. And so he started a company called Henny Penny. And if you go in Kentucky Fried Chickens today, you'll probably still see, unless they've changed the name, you'll still see the name Henny Penny on the side of nearly every piece of equipment in there. Especially their deep fryer, where they fry the chicken with the 11 herbs and spices. By the way, if you want to know what gives it its little different flavor, it's oregano. I figured out the 11 herbs and spices, so it's not a secret anymore. A lot of different peppers, salts, garlic, all that kind of stuff. Anyway, but anyway, I didn't think anything would come of it. And I just wanted to give it to him because I appreciated what he did. The next morning at 5 o'clock, I got a phone call from my supervisor, and he said, there's a little man in a white coat that wants to eat breakfast with you. Well, I went down there, and he shook my hand, asked my name, asked about my family. I sat by him and ate breakfast with him. He talked with me, thanked me for the reel-to-reel tape that I gave him about the song. And we took a picture together, and very, very generous. And I mean, I would never thought I'd eat dinner with somebody famous like that. But a gift can open a door to important people, because people don't expect a gift to be given to them. They expect people coming up to them wanting a gift from them. And when you give them a gift, sometimes you can open doors to important people. But as far as I'm concerned, the most important people in the world are the people that need Jesus. They're the most important people next to my church family. And I don't care if they're rich or poor, it doesn't matter to me. In fact, the ones who are poorer are more likely to need Jesus and more likely to listen to what I have to say. And they sure could use gifts. They appreciate it so much. But there's another lesson even more important. Now, before I get to that, when he talks about giving to you, good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over, this was used for measuring dry things such as wheat, etc. By wanting the most for their money, they would heap it into a measuring container, some kind of basket, shake it together, press it down, put it into a pile. Then they carry it home in the fold of their upper garment, their robe, and they would tie it on there and carry it all the way home. And that's what he's talking about here. In other words, you can't outgive God. It's pressed down, shaken together, running over, and it'll be put into your basket going home, your robe that you're tying up there. And that's what he's talking about there. You just can't outgive God. He said, for with the same measure that you use, it will be measured back to you. If you're an old greedy grump, Don't expect much from God. If you get things, sometimes it's not to your benefit. Sometimes the richer a person becomes, the more greedy they become, and the more hardened their heart is. So money sometimes is a detriment. People go crazy over money. I remember when my grandmother died. My father was already dead. He died at 47. And when my grandmother died, my uncle and my aunt and myself, we were there to, my aunt pulled us all in before the funeral and says, I want to divide it up right now. And my uncle says, can't you even wait till we get her in the ground? And oh, it got heated. I just listened to it. What do you think, John? They said, well, I'm just happy you invited me in here, but I don't care. I'd like to go ahead and bury my grandmother first. And my aunt looked at my uncle and said, you remember when we were riding in the back of that old Model A pickup and you almost fell out and I caught you and saved your life? He said, yeah. She said, I wish I'd just let you died. Can you imagine that? How evil and wicked that was. When people become that evil and that wicked, their heart is so hardened, nothing can reach them. So how big is your measure? Her core was rotten. And she was a very wealthy person, my aunt was. And her daughters were very wealthy, but they went far away from God. But our measure is more than just goods and services and money. Our measure is the joy of a loving family, a church family, a family of our children that love us for what we are, a family of believers, friends, and neighbors who know who we are and how genuine we are and appreciate that we are that way. If you're as generous as Nicholas O'Meara, then how large would your circle of influence be? Thousands? Millions? Billions? How many people know St. Nick? Santa Claus. I mean, you thought he was just a myth, wasn't you? He was actually a real person. And look how many lives he's influenced. Look how happy people are when they say, you don't say Santa Claus with a gripe or a grump on, unless you get that bill after Christmas you got to pay that you borrowed money for. But Jesus expanded on this before he concluded with our text. He said in verse 27, but I say to you who hear, love your enemies. Do good to those who hate you. Bless those who curse you. Pray for those who spitefully use you. To him who strikes you on one cheek, offer the other also. And from him who takes away your cloak, do not withhold your tunic either. Give to everyone who asks of you, and from him who takes away your goods, do not ask them back. And just as you want men to do to you, do also to them likewise. Boy, he just keeps saying that all the time, doesn't he? As you would want people to do to you, do to them also. Would you like people to be generous to you? Do you like people to be nice, to give you a gift, to give you a compliment, to give you a hug? Then do it to them before they do it to you. As you want people to treat you, treat them that way. You know, one thing I do when I go in the parking lot, if I see a nail in the parking lot, I pick it up. Because I wouldn't want to run over that nail and get a flat tire. And I know that God's watching. So I pick that nail up and I throw it away. What difference does that make? And piece of gum, usually I'll pick it up or kick it to the curb. But I don't want to step on a piece of gum or on a nail or something like that. And I know that I appreciate other people doing the same thing for me, whether they do it or not. And he goes on and says, but if you love those who love you, what credit is that to you? For even sinners love those who love them. And if you do good to those who do good to you, what credit is that to you? For even sinners do the same. And if you lend to those whom you hope to receive back, what credit is that to you? For even sinners lend to sinners to receive as much back. But love your enemies, do good and lend, hoping for nothing in return, and your reward will be great, and you will be sons of the Most High. For He is kind to the unthankful and the evil. Therefore be merciful, as your Father also is merciful. Matthew, when he recounts the same thing, he says, what do you do more than others? Well, that's a tough question, isn't it? What do you do more than others? So how do you live according to Jesus? What do you do to your enemies? What's our first temptation? Get back at them. That's right. Especially if they give us a slap in the face, like an insult or something like that. What do you do to that oppressor when they insult you or slap you in the face or something like that, or cut you down, or say something that hurts your feelings? What do you do to that person? Go on Twitter and just let them have it? Our president's pretty good at that. He fights back. That's politics, though. What do you do? Go let them have it on Facebook, Twitter, whatever? No. No. Instead, you say something kind to them back. Instead, you do not try to overcome evil with evil, but you overcome evil with what? Good. Love. Yes, good and love. What do you give to the undeserving? Those who are unthankful and ungrateful. Here's some food. I didn't want food, I wanted money. Well, what do? You say, I'll never give to anybody again. Is that what you say? I'll never give you anything again. Sometimes you might have to cut it off if people continue to ask and ask and ask, because you get to the point where you're just aiding, abetting in their habit. But there are even some other times that you may even help someone. And so to the undeserving, what do you give? Do you have to be thanked for everything that you do? When you open the door for someone, man or woman, and they don't say thank you, what do you want to do? Take the door and slam it on their foot, right? You need to say thank you. When you pull over for a car and they don't wave, what do? You get all bent out of shape. No, you don't. Just go on, because what difference does it make? You did a kind act. Don't destroy it by getting revenge and doing something in return. By what measure do you use to give others? What is in your heart and what is in your hand? If your heart, your core is big enough, you would like to make other people happy. You would like to surprise other people. You would like to give someone something and they say, why'd you give me that? It said, because I want you to have the best day you've ever had in your life. Boy, that just makes people, that just changes the whole scope of things, doesn't it? And what do you give to the undeserving? Those people that are those people that are just, I don't know, they're trying to bleed you. What do you give to them? Maybe you need to stop and just quit giving them money and go help them find a job. Maybe you need to spend some time with them and help them to budget. Perhaps you need to go take them to a place that can help them. Sometimes people will come to me and they say, I've got a $400 light bill, I can't pay it. Well, I can't really pay it either, but I can take a 20 out of my pocket and say, I got a 20 I'll put toward it. Can you do that? Sure you can. What did Jesus tell you? Give to how many people that ask of you? Everyone. Can you give to everyone that asks you? You can give them something. If nothing else, you can pray for them. fact, you ought to pray for them anyway. That's the best thing you can do for them. And so by what measure do you use to give to others? Love? Doing good? Lending? And what about your expectation when you lend to someone? What should you expect? To get it back? Nothing in return. How many of you guys have loaned out your yard tools or some of your tools to somebody and didn't get it back? How you feel about that? I know what you're thinking. Yeah, I don't do that anymore. Well, is that what God said to do? Yeah, but I had to pay $100 for that tool. Well, if you don't get it back, go to a garage sale and see if you can find one for 10. You know, that's where I get all my tools, from garage sales. If you give to someone, then expect, hoping for nothing in return. Why in the world would Jesus tell you to hope that they don't give it to you back?
You won't be disappointed if they don't.
You won't be disappointed, right? And when you lend, you're not lending to them. The Bible says you lend to the Lord. So I'd rather God pay me back than them. Wouldn't you? Yeah. I don't know how many books I've lent out to people, and DVDs and stuff like that on different religious things, and I rarely get them back. I don't worry about it. I don't even expect to get it back anymore. And that's just the way it is. People lose things all the time. Well, how do those of yours in your circle look at you now? As a person who never gives out anything, loans anything? I had a friend of mine that used to brag that he loaned this guy $40. And every time he saw him, he hounded him for that $40 for 10 years. And finally, the man paid him off, and he bragged about that. And I finally just asked him one day, Glenn, what kind of example of Christ did you set for that guy? You think he'll ever come to church with you? Well, I never thought of that. I said, then don't ever do that again, please. If you loan $40 to somebody, don't hound them. Well, then somebody owed him $1,000. He didn't learn from that. But anyway, actually it was $5,000. But he got his money back. So, but you know, he learned as he grew older and grew wiser. Can you really give to everyone who asks of you? Think about that. And what is the reward for this kind of lifestyle? Oh, go ask him. He'll give it to you. He'll give you the last dime. He'll give you the shirt off his back. You know, who are the most generous people in the world? It's usually the people that don't have anything. They'll give you something. You say you have a problem, they'll try to help you. They might even sell hot dogs and barbecues to raise money for you if your story is sad enough and they don't have anything. What about us? What about us as Christians? We think, well, just let's call, if you need money, go call the church. No. Don't put it off on the church. You start the process. It may not be all that they need, but you start and work with them. Don't put it off on someone else. God is wanting to see what you're going to do with what you have, with what is in your heart and what is in your hand. And what is the reward for this kind of lifestyle? What's the reward of a giving lifestyle?
Blessings from God.
Blessings from God. He said, your reward will be great, and you will be sons of the Most High. For He is unkind to the unthankful and the evil. Are we ever unthankful and evil? I don't even know what to thank God about, because I don't even know all the blessings that He gives me. As much as we drive, we just put over 100,000 miles on our car and we've only had it for 2 years. As much as we drive, and as many places as we go, and as crazy people drive, I don't know how we're still alive today. Only by the grace of God. And I don't know how many times that He saved me from an accident or from a tractor trailer that almost ran me off the road or from some other devastating situation. A wild animal, yeah. We almost hit a Duroc wild boar, javelina. And you don't see many of those red ones, but we almost hit him. Our car would have flipped and we would have been dead. He was right beside the road. If he'd have turned just a little bit, we would have been dead to this day. We're in the hands of God. I trust my God. And if it's our time to go and He wants to take us home, great. If we're out here doing His will, wonderful. My life is not my own. It doesn't belong to me. What about the money in your pocket? Does that belong to you? Who does it belong to? God. What about the money in your bank? Does that belong to you? It belongs to you. People said, well, how much money you got in the bank? Well, I've got XXX. No, we've got. Who's we? Me and God. We have that much in the bank that He's given me. Also be careful what you give and how you give it. I have something that I want to use tonight. Could I get a couple of volunteers? You'll get something. Steve, you want to volunteer? Okay, come on up. What about you, Mike?
He's bigger than that.
Okay, Mike, don't tell anybody, but Steve, Steve really has bad breath.
He needs help.
He does need help. Now, you got these lifesavers. This is in your hand. Now, what's in your heart is you're going to be gentle on him. And you're going to give it to him and get it to where he'll be so glad to receive it. Okay? Go ahead.
Steve, your wife told me to give you this. Was that the way to do it?
I've never heard that before, but that's great. That was excellent. I love it. Let's give him a big hand. Okay, do I have a couple more people I'd like to?
I'd like to give him something.
Okay, I'll let you do that in a minute. Anybody else? Levi?
Did you say that?
Come on up here, buddy. Who else? Come on up here. Crater of what?
Diamonds.
Crater of diamonds. Did you find some diamonds?
No.
You didn't?
No.
What would you do if you found a diamond?
I don't know, actually.
Give it to your girlfriend as a present?
I don't have one.
Oh, you don't have one. Okay.
She has one already.
Okay, now let's see how you do here. You know your buddy here. He got a real breath problem. Doesn't use deodorant. Kids make fun of him stinking at school, so you're going to try to help him out, okay?
Yeah, I know you've been through some tough times, but I hope this makes you feel better.
It will.
I hope it makes you feel better. Okay, well, that's good. Let's give him a big hand. Okay, there's another way that you can do it. You can say, pull it out. I love wintergreen. Have you ever tasted these? You never have? Would you like to try them?
Sure.
Good. Here, you can have the whole pack.
Thank you.
You need another one?
Yes.
Okay. I'll give you another one. Okay. See, you can do it that way. That's gold what you did. I had a Chinese man and his wife come up and do this. And I said, now use some tact. She took the lifesaver and said, here, your breath stink. Okay. You want to give Mike something, Steve?
I'll catch up with him later.
Catch up with him later? I need 2 more now. Who else is going to help me? Come on, brother. You can help me. Come on up. You 2 guys. Now, this is a book called I Died Last Night. It's about a deacon in the Church of Christ that went to hell. Were you a deacon? No. Okay. Okay. He's an elder, right? You're going to find a tactful way, but let's pretend that he was a good elder one time, but he's fallen away, and you're trying to get him to come back. So how are you going to tactfully give him this book? A lot of people have been restored after reading this book.
Think now.
Really fine man wrote this book here, and I found it pretty interesting. So I thought maybe you'd like to give it a try.
Well, I'd love to.
Really good author.
Thank you very
Good,
much.
thank you. Have you actually read it?
I hadn't seen that. That's the first print I've seen.
Thank you. No, it's yours.
I have one.
Oh, you have one. That's right.
I read it today, actually, and it was good. You gave it to me last night. It's an easy read. It's only about 67 pages long.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and the good things to give to the friends, your friends and neighbors and everything. So, and you just go to them and you say, I've been reading this. I've read this book, and it's a little scary, but I've learned so much about it. I've learned so much about loving the Lord with all my heart and soul, and it really has made a difference on me. Would you like to read it?
Sure.
Okay. Well, God bless you.
Thank you.
When you get through reading it, give it to somebody else. Good, good. And tell them this is where you're going if you don't straighten up. No, don't tell them that. Sometimes you want to give people something, but you're going to have to be really tactful with it. Giving is a lifestyle. It really is. And we need to remember that people need the Lord. They need kindness, love, consideration. Can you give this to her?
Sure.
What are you going to say?
I got you some breath mints, Mom.
Well, thank you, baby.
That's all you're going to say?
Because I love you.
That's a good one.
And she says what?
I love you too.
She says, are you trying to give me a hint?
And she's always been a hint.
So she's already used to that too. Isn't she? Okay, well, you can have one too. Thank you very much. I've got one left. Who would like some breath mints? Anybody? One of them. There you go. Okay. Here. Well, I need a breath mint when I go and eat at your restaurant tomorrow.
Yeah.
Well, good. You make onion. You put onions and jalapenos and all
everything.
And everything. All right. Good. Well, I know where to go. Here, you can have the bag. I'm in trouble now. Okay, so give people gifts, but make sure that you give them give them things that in a way that they will appreciate it. Like if you give somebody a tract on baptism or a tract on church attendance, I'm not so sure you would want to give that to them unless you gave it with, how could you give somebody a tract on church attendance and them not be offended? What if you gave it to them with a plate of cookies? What does Mary Poppins say? Just a spoonful of sugar makes the medicine go down. Yeah. Y'all go see Mary Poppins 2? Or The Return of Mary Poppins? Didn't miss much. Anyway, it was okay. But, okay, so be careful. Learn to give, and please don't let this fly by. Go get you a bag of candy, go get you something, go get you some things to take to people, share with people, and being known as the givingest person in town. Every year, my wife and I have a tradition. On Christmas Eve, we watch that old 1953 Scrooge with Alistair Sims, you know, the guy with the bug eyes. And I always watch that and how tight he was and how greedy he was. And he was mean. Everybody hated him. And he wouldn't even give a coin to little children out in the snow with bare feet that was singing. But after he was visited by the three spirits, then the commentator at the end said, there never was a more generous man, and the whole community thought well of him. And so let us end with what Tiny Tim says, God bless us, everyone. Isn't that the way that you want people to talk about you? That you're the most generous person they've ever met. This is the most generous people, the most generous, kind, affectionate church they've ever been to. This is the lovingest church in town. Wouldn't you want to hear that from people in the community instead of saying, huh? What? What? Church of Christ? Where? That's what people need to hear, and they'll hear it by seeing it in you. If you need to respond to the Lord's invitation in any way, won't you come now as together we stand and sing.